Blessings, 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 blessings be unto you. This is Mercedes Warrick, and welcome to the Sacredness of Healing, an affiliate program of sacredkey.com. So we are talking about holding the high watch and standing on sacred ground. I want to talk about, I want to tell you a story. Tell you a story. A friend of mine, my heart, my wisdom, my alter ego, my debate partner, my high watch, my doer, my steady force, my love, my sister. She got sick recently, and it was kind of a rolling series of events. And everybody who knows me knows that, you know, everybody's heading to the hospital. I'm heading to my altar. And some of that's very practical. I still, you know, hospitals and my immune system are not quite a good combination yet. But even with my personal circumstances, I can just remember, actually for a long time throughout my life, I would sit apart. I would stand apart. And I'm trying to remember, but I would stand apart and just kind of be in this space of observation. Turn here a little bit, get more comfortable. Be in a space of observation. And I had been in that space with her for quite a while. Like, I could tell that there was something rippling in the, I call it rippling in the frequencies. So when I got the calls over time, I would head to my altar. But the last call was the one that had me looking at myself. And she's my longest friend. We've gone through a lot of living together. She drove me to the hospital, every doctor's appointment for 5 years. She's a person that, I'll speak for myself, but I think this is true for her too. She's a person that we talk as we need to. So sometimes that's very frequently, and sometimes we just check in. You okay? I'm okay. Okay. Go back. Go return to what you're working on. But I was very, very angry with her. So when I went to my altar, one of the few times I've been angry, really that deeply, I was really angry with her. And I went to my altar to sit. And I wouldn't even say to hold the high watch, just to sit and to see what comes, you know. And when I finally was honest with myself, I was very angry for a lot of different reasons. But that anger, the base of that anger was really fear in a lot of ways, because my gift is not predictive. I don't consider myself to be psychic or anything. I do believe that I have honed a sensitivity to the frequencies that are unseen, and that's got a limitation to it as well, you know, but I might have a sixth sense or maybe even a seventh sense. I can feel or see things at a different vibratory range. So a lot of times the coming into the high watch is not immediate. Like, I don't go to the altar and just go, I'm going to sit in the high watch, you know. It's kind of a, it's kind of an easing into it. It's sitting or standing back, closing my eyes, observing the frequencies that are around a person or a situation. And sometimes when I'm holding the high watch, it's like there's an exercise, I talk about it in the breath series, but there's a pouring in. So there's like, like God is pouring in the healing essence of what is needed. And, you know, I sit and just as even a Reiki practitioner or an energy healing arts practitioner, holding that space, see my hands, and just holding that sacred space and holding that space and allowing myself to be a vessel of that Reiki energy, of that healing energy, of the God source energy, of the love energy. There was a lot of conversation in my morning communion this morning about life, of the life frequency, right? But I was angry. So before I could do anything, and I want to say to you, to be perfectly transparent, I was able to sit, but it took a few days. I mean, it was not an immediate, let's just move into this space. I was doing things, you know, I was doing things, and I was prayerful, but to get in that purity of the Sacred Heart, the language that we got yesterday, that to be in the purity of the Sacred Heart, it was like I was so afraid I was going to lose her. And I just don't even know. I don't even know how life would be without her, you know? And I was angry, and I was afraid. One of the few times in my life that I've ever really truly been afraid. So I said, I know I want to do what I do, as the crew always says, you need to go do what you do, but I couldn't get there. So I sat, and the lesson that I learned was how I entered the space was through a healing. I sat for myself. I don't remember. I have to be transparent. I don't remember saying even words like, God, free me from this anger. I just sat in this space and breathed. And whatever came through, I know something came through, but whatever came through, and I worked, in quotation marks, I sat for me. And this was a very vital lesson. Matter of fact, I'm remembering I heard that, sit for yourself, or, you know, some language like that. And as I was sitting, and I was sitting for myself, the breath came, and that breath began to calm me down. And then that breath began to bring life and forgiveness into my heart, grace. And as I was doing and this was maybe 3 sessions, as I was doing the 3rd session of this, I flowed into the communion. And as I flowed into the communion, I began to have the vision. And for me, I'm going to talk about my gift. When I'm in the communion space, what happens is I begin to feel the frequencies, like I began to feel the frequencies of healing. I began to feel the frequencies of having the right combination of doctors available for her. I began to feel the matter of fact, that one was very interesting, because I began to feel the communion of her non-physical support, like the angelics. I began to feel the communion of harmony within her family. You know, this can be a very tense and stressful time. I began to feel the communion of I'm going to say of rightness, like the exact right thing at the exact right time would come forward for her. And I began to feel the communion of just the love I have for this lady. And so I was able to sit in that love, and love transcends, transforms, and transmutes. Love is the healing light. Love is the healing force. And so that love transformed I was able to transcend my fear. I was able to transmute the anger. I was able to, I don't want to say let it go necessarily, but I was able to understand it. Like at the time, I couldn't understand why I was so angry. And then as I was going through this process, I began to understand why I was so angry. And I began to understand why I was so fearful. And that fear was the base. Another video, but fear is usually the basis of everything. You didn't hear me, and I was not in the right mind at that time, because normally what I would have said is, what are you afraid of? Why are you so angry, and what are you afraid of? What is the fear? What is the fear that's under the anger? But I couldn't get there. I was literally almost, I don't want to say paralyzed, but I was just outside of myself with this fear. So what I learned in that, and what I knew this, but I hadn't experienced this very deeply, is to walk and to hold the sacred ground and to be in the high watch is a healing of yourself, is a transformation of myself, of yourself. To sit in that space, because you're hearing me say I'm in communion at that point. I've the language that I use when I'm facilitating is I dropped into the space. You know, people say, what is your fallback position? I say, what is your fall in position? What are you falling into? And so I was in communion. I had fallen into my heart, but the full liberation of releasing myself from my human nature, and then allowing myself to move into a more spiritual nature, a spiritual space, and then coming into the divine space. As I'm coming into that divine space, that's when I am at different levels and frequencies. That's when I'm moving into being on the sacred ground, or in the sacred ground, and holding the high watch. When I was in communion, I heard the words, "I see you well." And so once I received that language and I had communicated with her what I had seen as far as, and it was really interesting. Doctors fell away, new doctors came in. It was really fascinating. But as I was explaining this process, and what happened was I heard, "I see you well." And that was the ground I stand on for my friend, for my dear heart. I see you well. Regardless of what was happening, if there was something that gave the appearance of a setback, something that gave an appearance of steps forward, something that gave the appearance of a coming into a material medicine or a material need. From that point, matter of fact, I texted her yesterday morning, "I see you well." You know, she's greatly improved, thank goodness, but that's the ground that I'm standing on. So I think that the first time I was talking about this, I talked about being in the space of existence. It's beyond emptiness, it's beyond peace, it's beyond emotion and feeling. There's just this beingness. There's just this space of existence that is the holy ground. And what is so, this morning in my communion, I'm going to speak about this soon, but this morning it was like there is just the existence of life. No definition of what life is, just being in the energy, frequency, vibration, and existence of life. And then then the words came, "I see you well." So as things have been transitioning, revealing through this experience, what has happened is I see you well, and that is the ground that I am standing on. So sometimes, and what that means also is, I want to really emphasize this point, because when I first started this years ago, I would have been sitting at my altar in a space for days. And I think there's probably times for that still. I'm not saying that goes away, but every time I was holding the high watch, I was at my altar holding that space. Now I go to my altar, I get into the communion, I allow myself to drop in, and then I would say "I see you well." My guidance is saying, "I see the world well. I see you well." So in that message, what we're saying is, when we sit in communion, it's not that narrow space. It's like we're putting that energy into the world at large, and we're not trying to fix anything. Like, I love that sentence, because I'm not saying the prayer of petition, you know, "Lord, please bring in the healing for the this or the that, you know, I see this." I have totally removed myself, and I've said, I will say, this is not what I say, but to give some clarity to the situation, I am releasing myself of the God of the all-knowing, the God of the all-resource, the God of the the God of life and love and liberty and light. Far be it for me to say, "I want it to happen this way. We need this thing. Please bring this person." When I'm in the communion of the high watch, what happens is, as I'm sitting, I'm allowing the spaciousness of God, the all-knowing, because even if the thing that we collectively think is the right thing for that moment, it's our limited perception. So often, I can't even tell you, so often I have been in a place and so much more came than what I could have imagined for myself. I think it was David Beck was saying, you know, this and something better, this or something better, right? And I love that. In the communion, I'm releasing myself into the something better immediately. I'm not even asking for this. I'm just saying, we're sitting here, and ononi yeshkena, the ananioko ekena nani yekena nanioko, the aspect of living came forward. So that came, it flowed in, and I'm not even saying please let her live. What I'm saying is the I'm not even saying what I am. This is so hard to describe. What I'm sitting in is life itself. That frequency flows in, and I'm holding the communion with life itself. And what guidance is saying to me is it's not necessarily even specific to that one situation, because as we're sitting in the communion of holiness, the communion of the Sacred Heart, when we're sitting in that communion, it's a radiant force that goes wherever it is needed. Okay? It is a radiant force that's going whatever is needed. So I'm just going to recap a little bit what I learned through this experience. The first thing I learned was I'm not praying for anything to happen, for anything to arrive. I'm sitting in communion with the with the existence of God itself, and what has flowed in, like in the Hawaii when we sat for the ancestors, that breath of life came through, that rhythmic breath of life came through. When I was sitting for my friend, I see you well, the energy, the life, the energy of life force came through. Second thing is, actually this is the first thing, but the second thing is, if I'm not right, then I pray for myself. I pray I'm in communion with, for, through, and as myself. And I sit there as an aspect of God, as God, I am as God is, as an aspect of a speck, a quintessence of God itself, to bring myself into a space of healing, a space of humility, a space of not knowing, turning myself into the unknown so that the known can, with a capital K, can come forward through me. I sit in communion for myself. Get myself straight. And I think the other aspect of that, which I find is very interesting, and I speak about it when I talk about spiritual hygiene, is sometimes there's so much going on, we don't even know the frequencies on the subtle levels that we've picked up. So as I sit and I bring myself into the communion, I am doing kind of a spiritual, energetic wash, cleansing of myself. Because we're all connected, the energy is all connected. And this is why you were so valuable and you were so cherished, because the energies that you are in tune with to carry is your unique spiritual blueprint, fingerprint, footprint, I don't know, but it's your unique spiritual imprint that you bring. So that's why it's so powerful when we're in circle together, because you have your unique gifts, your imprint, your spiritual gift. I have mine, somebody else will have theirs. We come together and we're interconnected, right? And it brings together, like a force field of life, a force field of the divine. So often, Bert's asking me to talk about judgment. So often we come out of grace and tolerance because we have an idea of the way things are supposed to go, the way things are supposed to look, the way things should be, what is beautiful, what is ugly, what is opaque, what is transparent. All of these different ways that we bring ourselves into a space of a container of some sort. In the high watch, the ground is completely unending. It's it's like when you close your eyes, you don't see a box, you don't see a circle, you see this expansive darkness, really. In my darkness, there's little specks of lights most of the time. But that's the unending, the never ending, the always flowing, the always present. So if you're finding that you have an opinion about something, the way something is going, even if you say, I'm just stressing this because I think we don't think about it this way, but even if you say, oh, that's great, of course it's great. I mean, we can still have human reaction and everything, but not to get it boxed in and solidified to the point of it's going to formulate a container in your psyche, in your mind. That's very important. So as we're coming into being in communion, we're coming into a cleansing of self, doing sort of like a spiritual audit of self, releasing any tension, any fear. How do we do that? We sit for ourselves before we sit for others. And as we sit for ourselves, as I experienced in this one occasion, we can flow into the holy watch, holding the high watch. We can flow into standing on the sacred ground. Now, the final thing I think for this video is all of this can happen in a moment, or it can happen over days. So in my case, I'm sitting for my friend, right? I'm sitting for my friend. I'm working through, why am I so angry about this? That took a moment. It didn't happen instantaneously. And I think it was day 2, was going into day 2, and I'm praying and I'm sitting, but it's not in the same frequency. So I'm at the altar and I'm sitting, but it's not in the same frequency as when I go into holding that high watch and being in the purity of the Sacred Heart. I love that language because I didn't have it until yesterday, but being in the purity of the Sacred Heart. So it's like that. This is not robotic. And the process is not linear. Notice I'm not saying step 1 is that you pray, step 2 is that you sit, Step 3 is that you get your favorite crystal. Step 4 is that you get your Bible verse or your holy text, and you sit with it. I'm not saying all of that, because what will come forward, believe me when I tell you, the other day I was doing some work and I felt to bow. Where did that come from? So I'm trying my best not to give you enough of an experience, a description of the experience, but not containing it. You use the same language, not containing it into step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So what this means is, in this instance, it's like, check yourself. Check yourself. Can you exhale, come into communion, and enter the Sacred Heart? What's stopping you? Is there some friction there? Is there an opinion there? Okay, I'm going to sit for myself. And what comes forward for myself. Then I'm not going to try again, because it's an inflowing. The one thing I may ask is, if I have some resistance, is this mine to do? Am I on assignment? Has God assigned me to be here? That was the other thing I didn't use that language at the time, but I had to say, is this mine to do? And at one point during this journey my friend was on, the answer was clearly no. I see you well. That was the ground I was standing on. But all the other things, we think, oh, I'm going to do some Reiki over here to clear the way. Not mine to do. Was not mine to do. Mine to do was, I see you well. I see you well. I see, regardless of anything else that was going on, I see you well. And so I had to take a deep, long breath. And that will happen. And then you'll flow into the space, and you will know, this is the way I'm supposed to hold the high ground in this circumstance, for this person, for the world. And know that as you are holding that holy ground, you actually don't know where that energy is going, because there might be somebody down the street that just needs a little dose of love or compassion, caring, life. I'm grateful for my friend, because she taught me this lesson, as she is my wise one. So I'm grateful for her. Always have been. I think this is enough for now. Check yourself. Sit for yourself. Be true to yourself. Understand that you are going into a space of knowing the unknown, so you don't have to know it all. You really just don't have to know it all. Watch the opinions and the excitement. Be in tolerance. Be in tolerance, not intolerant, but be in tolerance. Allow the spaciousness of life to flow in ways that you cannot even imagine. This or something better. Be true to your belief system, but understand that things may come into you that may be from a totally different space, a totally different faith, a totally different principle, and you will know that it is the right energy, because you will be. I would say it would be calm, it will be peaceful, it will not be urgent. Those are the things that I usually check. There'll be some discernment. You might get curious about it, but in existence, all things are available to us. And so we have to be open to receiving the all things. Blessings be unto you. Namaste.